Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. Let's get started. We are here today to talk about how legal service delivery can amplify the value of legal operations. I'm Andy Brereton. I'm the Vice President of Legal Operations here at ServiceNow. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your valuable time to hear from us and some wonderful guests we have here today to talk a little bit about the ServiceNow offering that we have called Legal Service Delivery, but also to talk about, in general, digital transformation within legal. So we're really excited to get started. And again, thank you for coming along for today's session. Before I get started, some housekeeping items. We have saved time at the end to answer questions, so please do use the Q&A functionality. We will monitor the chat too, but do use the Q&A specifically so we can see the questions. And I'm happy to throw any real difficult questions to this panel, so please do feel free to ask those questions. The presentation will be recorded and it will be shared on the ServiceNow community. And after the event, you will be prompted to give us your feedback. Please do give us your feedback. We are always open to improving, and it's really, really important that we're sharing what you need to hear from us. So please do give us that feedback. Okay, we're nearly at the fun part, but it would not be a legal presentation without a safe harbor notice. And my boss is on this call, so I've got to make sure I get this right. This presentation may contain some forward-looking statements. I'm not going to read this statement out word for word. You can familiarize yourself with it, but just be aware that you might hear some forward-looking statements. Okay. Let's meet our speakers for today. I'm going to ask each of our speakers to introduce themselves. I'm going to ask each of you to spend a minute or so, no more, giving your name, who you work for, what it is you do, but also add a little bit of flavor around the size of your organization, the size of your legal function, and what it is that you are really kind of excited to talk about today. So I'm going to come to the General Counsel of ServiceNow first. There you go. I've already helped you, Russ. I've given you a title. Russ,
thank you very much.
Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I am Russ Elmer. I am the General Counsel of ServiceNow. And for ServiceNow, that means that I have the honor of leading what I call our LEGREC organization, which is all the legal, as well as our government relations efforts, as well as our ethics and compliance efforts. And so I have a team of about 200 people, and they are spread out across the globe. I would say we're probably 60% in the United States and 40% in other parts of the world.
Awesome. Thank you, Russ. Chris-Ann, over to you. Please go ahead.
Hi, hello, everyone. I'm Chris-Ann Hodges. I'm the General Counsel for the Tennessee Department of Human Services. I have an Office of General Counsel that's composed of about 30 people. And we have various things we do. We're sort of a hodgepodge of things because we are in-house counsel for a 4,000 person, $2 billion agency in Tennessee that serves about 2 million Tennesseans with various social services and other governmental pieces of that. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris-Ann. We're super glad to have you here too. Sky, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sky Jones. I'm with Dell. I head up our strategy and operations function, specifically for legal. I cover all sectors from technology to global contract operations, growth and development, data science, and a number of things kind of in between. I've got a team of right around 35 to 40 individuals that help support our broader legal department as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you, Sky. And last but certainly not least, Richard.
Thank you, Andy. So I'm Rich Rothberg. I'm the General Counsel of Dell. We have about 500 people globally. One of those people is Sky, although you'll see as the conversation continues that it's a question of whether I'm working for her or not. But great to be here. We're really thrilled with our partnership with ServiceNow, and excited to talk about a lot of the digital improvements that we're making.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great panel. Thank you all again for spending time with us today. So let's have a look at some quick statistics to get us kind of warmed up for this conversation. So demands on legal are increasing. Wow, that's a big shock. 80% of legal departments are currently unable to manage current workloads. Legal, as a whole, resources are not utilized effectively. 75% of us feel like we're spending time on manual tasks. Current legal tech is not addressing the challenges. 70% of us think that the technology is not effectively helping us. Now, whether or not these statistics ring true to you or not, I think we could be in agreement that legal is overdue and has been for a while for transformation. But I would like to come to our panelists really quickly to get us going, to give us their perspective on these statistics. So Sky, I'm going to start with you in a moment. Just give us your view on, do these statistics run true to you? I know that you and Dell especially have made some improvements recently, but give us your perspective on these numbers.
Yeah, no, I think by and large, they all ring true. I mean, we started a lot of our effort around really digital transformation, and more broadly, we talk about future of legal from a Dell standpoint and where we actually need to be in looking at where our resources actually spending their time, what's actually most important to the business, how do we actually align, where are we actually getting bottlenecks, how do we actually free things up? And the impetus for where we're placing time and investment right now has a lot to do with that. So I would like to think that we're making progress in all of these areas, but yes, they do definitely ring true.
Great perspective. And I would love to hear from Russ in a moment. But Rich and Chris Ann, again, from your perspective, great balance of views here, right? Different level, different kind of timing of transformation. Rich, let's go with you first. I know Sky's given her perspective, but from the GC lens, do these things run true to you as well?
Yeah, they definitely ring true. The demands are definitely increasing, and especially in this economic environment where we talk a lot at Dell about trying to do less with less. Just that, the idea being that we really need to prioritize appropriately, make sure we're spending our time on the areas with the highest levels of risk. But in reality, it's very difficult when clients come to you, as I'm sure everyone on the call, would agree that, we're into client support and business support, and so this is where the technology comes in, and using the resources effectively are really important. And some of the tools that ServiceNow provides, it has really helped, and is an area that we're investing, because the reality is we really aren't able to operate effectively without the efficiency that we gain from technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Ann, how about you? From a great, again, differing kind of levels of perspective here. We have technology companies, the public sector. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I would also attribute the same similar percentages. I think for us, the first one and the last one probably ring the most true, and I might have rated those a little higher from my agency's perspective. Of course, like everyone, the demands on our agency and on our legal division in particular have greatly increased, and that's not a surprise exactly, given what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years in the need for government services and the increased federal funding that my agency has received. So we have an opportunity with the increased federal funding, but it's also leading us to trying to do innovative, unique things, or at least our clients are trying to do unique and innovative things with the money, and do them in a way that we can track compliance, but we haven't done it before. And so we are really operating in a different world today than we were 4 years ago. And I don't see that changing back. We're not going back. It's going to continue to increase. So the size of our staffing has had to increase. The good news for us is I think we were a little ahead of the curve in that we were already trying to address our technological needs because we had none. So it really is probably like many in-house counsel, but I can think of at least 7 different programs that we have within our agency that are completely different federal funding streams, completely different CFRs, completely different rules, and it lends itself to just sort of a lot everywhere all at once. And so we are trying to push that into something that's trackable And so I do think we were not addressing tech in the way and gaps in what we had available to us. We were the spreadsheet folks, right? So so we are trying to get that organized now and look out to the future and get our feet under us.
Great perspective. I love that. We were definitely the spreadsheet folks too at one point. So yes, Russ, from a technology ServiceNow perspective, give me just a kind of a minute on your thoughts on these statistics.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like contemplating Rich's comment, doing less with less. That rings so true. It's what we've been trying to do, but I haven't got that catchy tagline, but I do now. And I'm excited, and it is right. We are trying to take away a lot of this resonates with me, particularly the 75%. For me, the 75% time spent on manual tasks. I think there is so much work that is done that could be done more efficiently. And it puts the burden on everybody. So everybody's working very hard. And in this environment, everybody continues to have more things put on them as we try to automate so that they can actually do fewer things and focus their time on the things that are the most important and are the most bang for your buck. I have great sympathy for Chris-Ann for all the different requirements that she has from different CFRs and different obligations. We kind of have the same thing from different customers who have different needs and that we're trying to navigate to meet their needs. And trying to do this all in an automated way is it's a big goal. It's a big dream of ours. And, you know, given that this is the core of what we do workflow. This is what we try to do. And so for us, trying to get better is a challenge and sort of fundamental to what we do. So fortunately or unfortunately, I would agree with these statistics. And it's a whole effort to make us do better, which, by the way, is why you're here, Andy. You were my first and most important hire to really help us think about how we operate better.
Well, thank you. He's not usually that nice to me, but I'll take it. Thank you.
It won't be after this call, by the way.
No, I'm sure. Great perspective. I think we've definitely established there is a challenge for us to solve. Let's hear from the attendees. So, quick poll question. You're going to see the question pop up. Spend a few seconds and answer this for us. So, what stage best represents your legal digital transformation? And for our guest speakers, I am going to come back to you and ask you your perspective on this, but let's see the answers roll in. Oh, interesting. So quite a few, I was going to say quite a few, but then the numbers have changed. So quite a big percentage in planning and evaluation. So Chris, I'm going to come to you. What stage are you currently at with your digital transformation? I know that you're rolling out the LSD at the moment. Where are you up to with your kind of planning and evaluation stage?
Yeah, I agree. We're in early rollout, and it's exciting because we're starting something and trying to get our arms around something that we've envisioned. And now we're in the middle of early rollout, learning, well, it's not going to work exactly like we meant it to this way. So we are diligently working on enhancements and sort of for our next phase 2. But I'd call us an early rollout participant.
Great stuff. And then Sky, I'm going to come to you because I know you've been the one to really lead the LSD, the implementation at Dell. Where are you up to? And just give us your general perspective on how those digital transformation efforts have been received by the legal team.
Yeah, so I would definitely say we're well along our way on our journey. We're almost 3 years into it. But we're not completely through, actually. So we've got, I'd say, about 75% of our legal department that is on the LSD platform, and by which we actually have clients that are engaged in utilizing it. We're seeing about a 50% growth rate year over year, and we're getting inroads of just shy of about 20,000 different legal requests across the entire enterprise that are actually coming in. So it's quite successful. Our goal is that it ultimately will become kind of that single pane window and experience for all of our clients to actually engage as an entry point in. Right now, we're kind of in an evaluation phase, I would say. There are some things that have gone really, really well, and then some areas that we've realized through implementation we need to do better. Sales and sales contracting is one area of that. So we're starting to relook at global harmonization. So when we actually rolled out, we rolled out more from a regional perspective, and we have different ways of doing things. And so being able to look at and say, well, okay, where can we actually harmonize? How can we create that client experience to be better end to end? What insights does that actually get out of us? And then looking at and introspecting the types of requests that are coming in are also helping to inform what we can help self-serve on from a deflection standpoint on a knowledge base, or where we could do more training or help our legal team members. So right now, I'd say we're well on our way, but we're also kind of doubling back in some areas to optimize that experience.
For sure. Great perspective. Thank you. There was actually a question that came in the chat around, how long did it take and did you use a phased approach? I think you've kind of somewhat answered that question for sure. Let me keep that question in mind for a moment though. So when we think about just how to get started, I talk to a lot of customers, a lot of peers in the industry. The question is, wow, where do I get started? So we've broken it down here. Key drivers for successful transformation. High level, focus on the engagement points. So a front door into legal, how legal are engaged. Increase the productivity for the legal professionals doing the work. Okay, so it's a paralegal, it's a attorney, whoever it might be. The LSD is a wonderful solution because it provides that front door capability with the legal counsel center, the ability to perform the work. And then you can really start to gain some insights from some pretty cool reporting and analytics. So I feel like we've answered that question, but let's go back to the panel. Our approach at ServiceNow has certainly been to do it in stages. So, Chrisanne, Sky, Rich, Russ, whichever one you wants to go first for that question, jump in and answer that question. Is it the right thing to do in phased approaches? Is that the right thing to do?
Maybe I can start because I think one of the key drivers is cultural, even before the tools. And, for us, it was really imparting across the whole team the relevance and importance of digitizing and using technology to help us do our jobs. And to me, that continues to be a challenge. We can have great tools, which we do, which you help provide, but unless people are committed to use them, acclimate to them, and really be champions of doing it, it's hard to really make progress. So to me, that's the gating factor: getting genuine buy-in and making sure people understand why it's so important.
Absolutely.
I think one other piece that I would just add to that is we definitely took a phased approach. One piece is there is an upfront investment that was required by our legal teams across the board. And so there's also a lot of knowledge sits in desktops, in people's heads, in a variety of places. And to really do right, you kind of need to look at things, understand what is the process, what are the requirements, what are the outcomes that you actually want to drive to. And that takes an upfront level of investment and work to really define. And so for us, when we very first started, we actually started with our Latin America region as a whole. They were a smaller team by and large from our regional segments, but they were also most mature in terms of documentation, process requirements, how they approach things holistically in that region, and they were early adopters from a technology standpoint overall and very excited about it. And so to the culture point that Rich had just highlighted, that's where we started. And then we kind of went within our ethics and compliance and then started phasing into other areas. But the culture as well as the process component and that upfront investment to really identify your requirements, think about them from an end user client perspective, not only from a legal perspective, I think is equally important.
So important. Like, yes. I mean, I echo that entirely. Change management or understand the process, so important. Chrisanne, what about your perspective again? Because great that we have panelists at different stages. So are you thinking through those things at the moment too?
Yes, and in fact, I wish I'd had Sky's phone number probably about 1.5 years ago, because what she just said is what we lived and learned through. We started we had a start and a stop with it, to be honest. And we kind of cast our net too wide. We knew we needed to focus the Office of General Counsel and put in the time and make the time to devote to things like figuring out workflows, figuring out what we wanted to capture and what we didn't. And that's difficult. It shouldn't be, but it's very taxing. We brought in too many people at first because we thought, well, this is a subject matter expert in this, and this is a subject matter expert in that. When really, I find what we needed were people who were good at building something, and not so much the lawyers who were good at their work. And so we had to kind of narrow it down to people who understood what this process was, who were a little bit more technologically inclined than some of the others, who could hear the lingo and see the reason why we had to approach it the way that we did, building out the templates and things like that. So our second go at it, we got much sleeker at it. We kind of knew what we were doing. We had a great partner to work with, and it was still a tough mental exercise. And I would echo something that was mentioned a little earlier. Definitely, I agree with a phased approach. You've got to think about how you're going to manage the change management and what you want to hit first. But I think that we were able to do that in a way with the second try, basically, that really moved a whole lot faster and got us to where we need to go. Our biggest challenge that we still have now, and I'll end it there, is that we are still working through what's important to track. We tried to put as much as we could that's in there, but between a request or a matter or something small that's a phone call that you handle, to get to this last piece here of gaining insight into ongoing demand, we're still really early in that. And I expect that to be difficult, and we're just going to work our way through it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and just to add to Chris Ann, your last comment, because I think we're a little further along in the journey, but still dealing with some of that. What do you actually want to track? And more importantly, what are the outcomes that you want? One thing that we are reevaluating right now is we like to track lots of things from a legal standpoint, but you can also overcomplicate the workflow and the request, which makes it a very poor client experience. And then your customers, wherever they reside in the business that you support, don't actually want to use it because it's too complicated. And so I think being able for us to really evaluate, what are we actually trying to do? Is there a different way that we can capture certain things, whether it's on the back end from Counsel Center or whatnot? And how do we create the ease of experience on the front end with what's most important? That was a learning exercise for us as we went through, because from a legal standpoint, our teams were thinking of things as they should from a SME perspective, but not necessarily from the engineering or the sales or the other perspective, because they just don't sit in that role.
Great perspective, guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to move us on to the second poll question. So again, a chance for our attendees to get involved. If we can prompt that poll question, what is the most important challenge you're trying to solve for? And as the answers are coming in, a question did come in the chat as well around which work streams gave your teams the largest efficiency gains. And so kind of tied to this question, what is it you're trying to get at? As these answers are coming in, let me give you the ServiceNow perspective. One of our very early workflows we launched was around sales contracts. Very simple intake. What is the request for? What's the deal type? What's the value? And really trying to make sure that we were getting that work to the right level of resource. We were able to use that workflow to deflect work to shared services and actually deflect work to self-service entirely. So that gives you a little bit of the ServiceNow perspective, very fast and quick value for your implementation, which is really, really important. But panelists, please have a look at these answers. I think this is interesting. So 47% tell us that they would like to focus on general legal inquiry intake. Russ, I'm going to come to you on this one. This is where we started, but give me your perspective of these answers and where the challenges that you were really trying to get at as a general counsel.
I think it's kind of funny because I was trying to decide how I would answer this, and I almost think I would have picked other, which was just general management of our business, which is probably the wrong answer. But I think general legal inquiry intake is probably what I would say. We have focused, because for us, our live stream is our sales efforts. And so that's where you can make the biggest bang for the quickest buck. And it's kind of funny, I've been sort of wanting to jump in because everything Sky says, we have almost like a complementary experience for us. So Sky's talking about starting regionally and then but then realizing that you got to go global. And we've started global and have realized that there's also that we've in the context been missing some regional nuance so that we're trying to figure that out. But what we are trying to do is increase our overall efficiency. And I think the general legal inquiry intake was the first place where we got the biggest bang for the quickest buck. And that's what we were looking for. We wanted to have success because success breeds success. So if people felt like, oh, because the change management is an important part of this. It's the critical part of making this all happen. And so what you want to do is create a world of evangelists. So people who do something simple that has success. And then from that success, people say, oh, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm willing to slightly change the way that I do my business because it actually works, because I've seen it actually works. And then I'm willing to try more things. And so I think, so then if I'm looking at all these things, this general legal inquiry intake is probably the place where we would start. I mean, it is where we started. We started with the inquiry intake, which was the sales reps in the field wanting to get a contract done. So just capturing that and then getting that request to the right place actually had a big bang for the buck.
Yes, thank you, Russ. Getting that value is critical. Rich, from your perspective, again, we've heard from Sky in terms of the ops lens. Does general legal inquiry intake, does that make sense to you too? Do these results ring true?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think from a department perspective, when I think about, our challenges, encompasses, efficiency, cost effectiveness, managing risk, collaborating, using our resources in an alignment. And so, I definitely could see general inquiries and that, particularly identifying low risk inquiries that are subject to self-service is really important. But a lot of our time and effort is with contracts. When I look at our 500 people, a vast percentage, a high percentage of them in one way or another touch contracts. So, it's hard to differentiate between the two. But I think, that's what we're the challenge that I think your products and others help us deal with are these efficiency, cost effectiveness, risk management items. And so they really are both pretty essential to get the benefits of it.
Absolutely.
I would really love to hear Chris Ann's perspective on this.
Yeah, I was listening to those comments and thinking about how to answer this. I think, first of all, the important challenges for right now is the general legal inquiry intake. And it goes back to we don't have a whole lot that's sort of standard and usual. Probably like your offices do, we manage the HR issues, we manage the contracting issues, we manage the programmatic legal issues, we litigate, we do administrative appeals, we do rulemaking, legislation. We do so many different things, as I'm sure you also have your own list of things that you do. But I'm certain there are buckets we can put that in, but I don't know what the buckets are until we get through this a little bit. So the general intake right now is probably primary for us, but I also agree I'm probably at an other, because I think we're going to figure out what's important. I had not a struggle, but we kept trying to catch ourselves as we were going through development to not do the sort of lawyer thing and want to map out every possibility of the thing that can happen in this kind of instance to just what was the outcome? What do I want to see on a report? And let's build it backwards so that it makes it customer friendly, easy to use, and we're getting what we need to get. And around here, I'm sorry, it's an old tired saying, is the juice worth the squeeze, to figure out what we're doing and what we want to log in. I forecast that's going to change. But I felt like I was always competing to get my clients engaged, to get that buy-in. I'm competing with Outlook and with a phone call, because that's how we normally get our stuff. And asking them to go someplace else and have some details ready for us to go into an intake form to get to us is a part of a challenge. I wanted to say something on the contracts. We do a lot of contracts. We do regular contracts for just for services, and we do a lot of grant contracts where we're pushing money out to subrecipients to perform some kind of services. But we also have the state procurement system. So we didn't build anything about contracts into our legal module, but we're looking forward to what we can put in there soon. So that's something coming in a next phase, because what I really want to map is the time we're doing in legal review, not the tracking of the contract, because I can't track it there. I have to track it somewhere else. But I'm really excited about that prospect sort of as the next phase.
Great stuff. Thank you. Time is ticking on, so I'm going to move us on and show the attendees this slide real quick. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I do want to talk about it a little for kind of a minute or two. I'll also try and answer one of the questions that came in around, do you track and kind of store contracts? And also, do you use the LSD platform for integration with outside counsel? So what you're hearing from the panelists today is their experiences. The ServiceNow platform can be configured and customized in many different ways. The organization that Chris-Anne is dealing with, that Sky, that Rich, that Russ and I deal with, they're similar, and they're also very different as well. So we have a workflow that manages our outside counsel spend, that integrates with our e-billing system. That has given us tremendous insight into our dollar spends with outside counsel. We do track statistics around contracts in the LSD and through reporting. The LSD, Legal Service Delivery, is not a CLM system, but we do have the ability to integrate with CLM systems. That's fairly straightforward too. The key thing I want to hit on this slide, though, is really the speed of implementation. Sky has already touched upon the importance of understanding the policy, the process. Yes, that's absolutely key. But you can get value pretty quickly from using this platform. So let me move on to the third poll question, because I do like this one. In terms of reporting and kind of analytics, what level of reporting and analytics do you have that drives decisions? And I'm going to come to Russ on this one first from our panelist group, because I think, Russ, and give me your perspective, I think legal has always had a seat at the C-suite table, of course, but I do think that the control tower that we now have really helps us, maintain and really influence enterprise-wide operations from a legal standpoint. Let's give me your perspective on that, Russ, and then we'll come back to the poll answers. Yeah,
I would be so bold as to say that we have advanced reporting and metrics for us, in part because we really worked hard on it. And to Sky's point earlier, we figured out what were the most important. We made a decision as to what were the most important metrics that we wanted to measure. And for us, to echo what Chris-Anne was talking about too, the time to get a contract from start to finish was something that was top of mind for a lot of folks, particularly on our sales team, because you have the lore that, it's stuck in legal. And that becomes both something that people talk about, but also it can be a convenient excuse for folks too. And I couldn't respond to that snarky comment with data, and now I can. And we've been able to, Andy, through our work, take a look at, and we started with reporting, and with the reporting, we were actually able to see how long does it take to go from start to finish with a contract. And then as we continue to play with it and to play with the systems and learn more about where were contracts getting stuck, and just having that data and being able to see it helped us sort of open up roadblocks. And then when we do that, we got to start to see the metrics come in favorably, that actually the time was starting to become less to go from start to finish and getting a contract. And that creates so much credibility with the business units that we're supporting. It creates so much ability with the team. I go and I shout it from the rooftops to anybody who'll listen to me. And when we can do that, then I get buy-in, and then it becomes this sort of virtuous circle that people are saying, oh, you are doing better. And they can actually sort of start to see it. They'll still complain about you, but you'll actually start to see some movement and some improvement. And when you do that, then it really becomes fun. But to Skye's point, figuring out what those metrics are that you care about is the first and a really hard step to do.
Yes, absolutely. Rich, from your lens too. So I think what I'm hearing from Russ there is that the reporting has helped us operate more effectively as a legal team, but also influence how the entire enterprise can operate. Is that something that you're seeing? Is that something you're focused on and excited about?
Well, I think we've made a lot of advances, and Scott could talk about it in a little more detail, a lot of advances in the metrics and reporting that we have. And they certainly help us see where we're spending time and how our work is trending. The thing that we are continuing to focus on is the second part of the question, driving decisions. And that's a little bit more difficult. Getting metrics and information that actually inform accurate decisions and risk assessment. We're making progress. We have analytics in terms of contracts and things like that are helping us, but that's what we're trying to I would say really crack, really getting the data that actually drives decision making as opposed to more reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. Sky, before I come to you, I'm just gonna kind of pivot from this question a little bit, because Rich, you just made me think of something. It's not necessarily what level of reporting, it's actually how easy is it to get that reporting, right? So like I think Chris Sand said before, spreadsheets are always kind of an option. But have you seen, Sky, an improvement in the ease of being able to report? Or is that something you're at least going to be focused on going forward?
Yeah, so I would actually say I would classify us by and large as advanced, but I agree with Rich. So I'm fortunate enough, we have a data science team that sits within legal. We run our own legal BI warehouse. We've got quite a lot of capability. Data isn't actually our issue, whether it is pulling from the performance analytics that happens to sit within the LSD module, we feed that into our warehouse, or if it's pulling from a plethora of other enterprise and legal systems that we have across our department. It's actually being able to focus, okay, we have this information now. How do we actually synthesize it? What are we really driving to? What behavior change is it actually driving? And how are we actually utilizing that to our advantage? And that's kind of the place that we're in right now. But I do think that and we've got a plethora of dashboards on, any subject matter, whether we're looking at, risk scoring of our contracts to specifically what's happening within our IP, patent, or litigation space to any number of areas. But we're trying to mature up that curve of how do we proactively drive decisions with the business and get in front of them with that. I think the starting piece, though, is, do you even know what you have and what's informing any decision as a baseline? And so if departments perhaps don't have that's the starting point. But then it's, how do you accelerate past? And that's kind of, I won't say where we're stuck, but where we're challenged at right now.
Absolutely. No, great perspective. Chris Ann, how about you? I know you're starting to think these things through now. How do you feel about the kind of the reporting and analytics piece?
Well, we are just really new at it. So we're using sort of what was a pretty minimal set of planned reports and dashboards from our first implementation. And as we get information in the system, I think what it's done is it sort of spurred our imagination for where we can go with this. But the reason, probably if not the first reason, the second reason we wanted to do this in the first place was for reporting. My department as a whole, we are very data driven, metric driven in a deliberate, intentional way when it comes to the funding streams and the programs and everything. But my little office of general counsel just doesn't have that. So I can sort of rob from other places to find outcomes, but we need them for ourselves. And so we're going to get there.
Absolutely. Thank you all again. I really like that question. I'm going to move this slide on, but before I cover the slide, just a note, I have saved some questions in the Q&A. We're getting to that stage where we're going to hit the Q&A part. So please, if you have questions, put them into the Q&A option, and I promise you we'll get to as many as we can. But we've talked a little bit about reporting. So this slide here covers what we've built internally at ServiceNow. We have this kind of art of the possible approach where we built a GC dashboard, the GC control tower. You've heard from the panelists already about their approach to reporting. What we have done, built on those kind of three tenets of intake to legal, the practitioners fulfilling the work, and then reporting. We have different levels of reporting. So each workflow that you launch can have their own reporting. From my perspective, from legal ops, that's where I really dig into the detail. For Russ's perspective, he identified 5 key areas that he wanted to focus on. Now, this is dummy data for the slide, obviously, but it gives you an idea of how you can build that control tower, how you can build reporting for the different levels of folks in your organization. So I hope that part of the conversation was really helpful as legal moves to being a more, at least data-informed decision-making body. Okay, great stuff.
And Andy,
yes, Sky, go ahead.
One, and I don't know if everyone has an appreciation, but I think one of the advantages of the LSD module and the kind of the control tower you're talking about is you can easily integrate in other systems by which you can pull in then the insights from those other legal applications that may focus on very specialized practice areas into one actual view from that if others have other components.
Yes, thank you, Sky. No, I appreciate you chiming in there for sure. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the Q&A. We're right on time. We've got 15 minutes left. But let's get to some of the questions. And again, if you're out there, please put your questions into the Q&A, not necessarily the chat functionality. It makes it easy for me to track. So have you leveraged alternative service providers to manage legal administration requests? For example, we do this using ServiceNow for AM Law 200 clients. So I've got a perspective on this, but I'm going to put this out to the floor. So have you leveraged alternative providers to manage legal administration requests? Rich or Sky, from a Dell perspective, is that something you've done or at least thought of or decided against? I'm going to go to Sky. You take that one.
Okay. And you're talking specifically about alternative legal service providers?
Yes.
So I apologize if I'm misconstruing the question here, Andy, but so we don't really have alternate service providers that we're taking requests in. What we actually have are alternate legal service providers that act as an extension of our team for volume velocity type work that actually operate within the platform as an extension of our team to help manage, respond to, and triage different things. So I don't know if I'm directly answering that, but we do have various ASPs that help as an extension from a triage and a focus on specific things.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's not so much administration, but sort of low level or lower risk contracts, things of that nature, where we utilize service providers.
Yes, and I think so when we talk about alternative providers, it can be law firms, maybe we've seen now the big four enter into legal services. I think the question is aimed at, can you use the platform to manage those type of requests?
You can. We have our individuals as a primary, I guess, and then we have key, perhaps best cost resources and service providers around the globe that act as an extension.
Yes, absolutely. Chris Ann, have you got a perspective on that? Is that something you see on your roadmap or not yet?
Yeah, I don't think so. We don't, and I don't think that we will. We're pretty internal, and that's very intentional. So we wouldn't have, for instance, we work with the Attorney General's office. They're not going to have, if this is what the question's getting at, they're not going to have insight, and we certainly aren't offering it up for public to come to DHS Legal. We are DHS's attorneys, and we had some other programs that we use for legal purposes, but we don't use them anymore.
Makes sense. We at ServiceNow, we actually we have a shared service team, and we do manage our work to and from. They're part of our organization. And so I think the answer from Chris and Sky is really helpful. I think the other thing I'd say is, remember that the platform is very capable in terms of managing permissions and security. It's obviously table stakes for any SaaS offering. So there's a question in the chat that I see here, and I do like this. So if you were about to start on your implementation of LSD today, what is the biggest piece of advice you'd like to give our attendees? I'm going to give you a second to think about that, and then I'm going to take the answer from a ServiceNow lens, and I'm going to come to each of you. The biggest piece of advice that I would give is, it's actually a piece of advice that our CIO gave me a while ago, Chris Betty. I would always have these good conversations with Chris around, I've got to understand policy process before I implement tech. Chris would say, Andy, you learn the most of a car when it's on the road, not when it's being tinkered on in the garage. I really had a struggle with that, and I think we kind of met in the middle, and I've learned so much from understanding, yes, understand the policy, understand the process, but don't be afraid to deploy the technology. Even if you do it in a controlled scope way, you learn the most about the technology when it's deployed. Russ, I'm going to come to you straight away on this one. What would your biggest piece of advice be?
I would say start defined and small, and something that you actually know is going to be successful. So start with start small, get a win, and build from there.
Absolutely. Chris-Anne, how about you?
Choose the right people, and that may seem obvious, but you're gonna need people who are able to understand this kind of development. They don't have to completely understand it, but you can't just bring, as I said earlier, a subject matter expert in one area in and expect them to understand the actual process of doing this. So that would be my best advice, and make room for that team. You've got to shift their response. If they've got other things that they do, you've got to make room and assign roles.
Really great advice. Sky, how about you?
I would say be very clear on what is the outcome that you're actually desiring, and understanding what that is. And then to add to your comment, Andy, I would say, don't let the art of perfection get in your way, because we did have teams that were like, it's just not right yet. It's just not right yet. And at some point, you just kind of have to call it and learn. The other piece that we had a high success rate, or where we saw high success, is where we could go conjoined legal with the business, where we were changing our engagement model at set levels within the organization, and having the business also go out with legal to say, here is how we're actually going to support you. Here is what you're going to do. Here is how, so the change management piece, but just up front and foremost, I would say, be clear on the outcome that you're driving to, and don't let the art of perfection get in the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rich, how about you? From the
I go back to the cultural point, sort of connected to what Sky said. But to me, it's not the outcome. It's the fact that no matter how easy a tool might be to use, which ServiceNow is pretty intuitive, it's still an effort. It's still different. And getting people to understand that it's not really optional, that you succeed in doing it, that there's the benefits are such that they have to work at it and be committed to it. And then once they do it, it becomes a bit more easy and natural. But to me, it's that first step is laying the groundwork for success, which is people actually committed to the success of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope those nuggets really help people. I think that's really great advice. One question I do want to hit real quick is, would this work for litigation? Again, I'll give you guys a minute to think about that. We do use our work. We do have a workflow for managing litigation. It's not a workflow that provides the full matter management of a litigation portfolio, but it certainly deals with the intake, tracking the progress, the advice, the kind of milestones of the advice of the litigation. But that is a customized workflow, just for full transparency. But is anyone else, I don't know if Dell or Chrisanne, from your perspective, you use it for litigation or you plan to? Maybe you can just chime in. Chrisanne, I'll start with you first.
Yes, we are. And I'm so glad to hear you say that, because you're more expert in this than I am. We also had to customize it. It is not, I think, just knowing what to expect. If you've worked with any kind of timekeeping system or other case management system that's, endemic and, prevalent in law firms and things like that, it's not going to look like that. And you've got to build it out a little bit. So, who knows where the system itself might go or how we develop it out might go. That's one place, though, that gave us some pause. Trying to milestone everything seemed to be much more of a burden than it needed to be. So we, because it could take so many different turns. So I think we're still working in that with a little, but that's about half of what we do. So it is going to work for us.
Yes, absolutely.
And we by and large, from a litigation workflow standpoint, we don't use it for that. We utilize another solution right now. But we do have general knowledge, awareness, and intake associated, but not as a litigation management workflow.
Yeah. No, I think that that really brings us to a good point. I think the thing that I'd like to really kind of leave the attendees with is the LSD can be the foundational kind of stage and step that you take for digital transformation. It can help you intake work, understand the work you're doing, can help you perform the work, provide reporting across a number of different areas. But yes, there are certain things that are specific to organizations which will need more work. I'm going to bring this to a close in a moment. I'm going to share real quick some upcoming events and resources. CLOC is the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium in Vegas, which happens to be the same week of our ServiceNow Knowledge event as well. Both Russ and I are going to be at both of those events. So if you'd like to, meet up, talk, please do reach out to us. We're happy to share with you our customer zero journey for the legal services delivery product. We also have a legal value calculator you can check out there too. So much of this has to be about the value you bring with your digital transformation efforts. You've heard from this wonderful panel. This is not transformation for the sake of transformation. This is about getting value. So I hope you can check out those resources. Before I close us out, any closing words from each of our panelists? Before you do, again, thank you to each and every one of you for giving us your time today. Thank you to everybody who's attended. Any closing words from any of you, please jump in. Russ, I'm going to start with you.
So first, I also want to echo to thank you to Chrisanne and Sky and Rich for joining us. It's been great. And then I would also like to say that I think don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Get started, start small, and grow big.
Thank you, Russ. Rich?
Yep. Well, great to be here. Again, I really appreciate your partnership and support. You're great to work with and have really helped us a lot. So again, well done and good to be here.
Thank you, Rich. Sky, thank you again. Any closing words from yourself?
I would just say it's there's a lot of possibility. Be intentional in terms of how you're trying to step into things and drive it. It definitely is a journey. Be agile and nimble along the way. We're pretty excited about where we're at right now. So looking forward to more.
Absolutely. Chrisanne?
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I learned more than I said, probably. We're looking forward. A common refrain around our office is we can't wait to see where we are next year. And so I'm excited about that.
Great stuff. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.